Let's play a game. I've created a list of things I'd like to analyze, the hardwares, features, and accessories that are on the Switch 1 that will also be appearing on the Switch 2, as well as features that were added to the Switch 2 that weren't available on the Switch 1. I kind of wanted to break this stuff down on an individual piece-by-piece basis, and really just to analyze how much more the Switch 2 has changed or remained unchanged from the Switch 1. This was actually recommended to me in the comments from, I think it was yesterday's video. I unfortunately can no longer find that comment, so I can't credit you, but thank you for the suggestion, and if you comment and I see it, I will pin it. Now, there are a few reasons I would like to do this. Number one, at the end of the day, I am still a Nintendo fanboy. As I've repeated numerous times, I am currently on non-speaking terms with Nintendo. And before you scoff at the sentiment of me calling myself a Nintendo fanboy, I've been consistently uploading 3 or 4 retrospective videos a week since the Switch 2 Direct. Heck, I even posted a Mario Party video that nobody really watched. So even though a vast majority of you are just clicking on my critical Switch 2 videos, I'm still Nintendoing a lot. If anything, I am Nintendoing more than I am anti-Nintendoing because the retrospective videos take me a lot longer to make than this stuff. But let's get back on track. Since I am still a Nintendo fan, and since I will still try to buy a Nintendo Switch 2 once the price drops, or if I buy it secondhand in a few years from now, I'm still interested enough in analyzing the difference between the Switch 1 and the Switch 2. I am going to set the prices to the side here. I'm going to pretend that we're back at the end of the Direct, and I am very happy with what I saw before I saw all the greediness and the price gouging. So I want to give this not only a technical analysis, but also a Nintendo fans analysis. Basically, like I said, setting the prices to the side, I want to see if Nintendo is playing it too safe. And by that I mean I want to analyze if all of the upgrades that they are providing are worth it to a customer. But I do want to group the customers into a few different categories. There are an infinite different types of people when it comes to who's purchasing the Switch 2, but I'm going to try and break it down into only 2 or 3 different categories. The first category is perhaps the largest. Those are the people that will not be watching this video, or really any video on the Switch 2. Either they'll pick one up down the line because a few of their friends bought it, or their dad might decide to buy them one because he saw an ad during a Super Bowl commercial, or it could be a grandparent at the store during Christmas time looking for a gift for their grandchild. We'll call this category the casuals. Not necessarily casual Nintendo fans, but casual gamers. The next 2 categories probably make up most of the people that are watching this video, as well as any other Switch 2 video on YouTube at the moment. It's difficult to categorize it by name, but let's say it's the people that care more about the power and the performance, and the people that care more about the, experience or magic. This is what I mean by it's difficult to categorize it because I would classify myself as somebody that's more interested in the experience, but I also do care about performance and higher resolutions, I just don't hold it to as high as a value. And likewise, I'm sure that many of you that are excited for the 4K 120 frames per second are very excited for the actual experience of the game, in addition to the power. So I'm gonna refer to the groups as power and experience, but just try not to take it too literally. And I know even with saying this, it's gonna cause like a whole argument in the comments, but yeah, bear with me here. So yeah, we got the vast ocean of casuals, those who prioritize the power and performance, and those who want the magic and the experience. As I go through each one of these things that I'm comparing from the Switch 1 and the Switch 2, I want to make a bit of a personal guess as to which group it'll matter to and which one it won't. At the end of the day, these are all just going to be my own opinion, and I know many of you will disagree with it, but I still think it'll be fun to go through. So without further ado, let's get started with the actual tablet itself, the console. Oh, I probably should have clarified, I'm comparing this with the base model Switch, just because it'll make it a little bit easier. So there's a pretty noticeable increase in size from 6.2 inches to 7.9 inches. This comes with an upgrade to 1080p in handheld and 4K on the TV. You also now have ray tracing as well as the DLSS, which was rumored for the Switch Pro, but when that didn't happen, it looks like it made it to the Switch 2. Then obviously you also have the 120 frames per second, the VRR, and the 3D audio. Appearance-wise, it basically looks the exact same, but larger. Now, obviously, the people that I put in the power category will most likely love everything I just said. If anything, they might complain because it's not powerful enough. The ones that prioritize the experience, I mean, for me, 1080p 60 is good enough. I didn't really mind the handheld in 720. I am happy to play a console that is more powerful, but at the same time, if they announced the Switch 2 with just 1080p 60, I probably would have been like, okay, sure. That's good enough. So maybe there's a little bit too much of my own personal feelings in the experience category, but in fairness, I am the guy behind the microphone, so it's kind of hard to remove that bias. So I'm going to say these features actually don't matter to us. And as far as those blue ocean folks go, they might think that the bigger screen is cool. I doubt they care much about the resolution. I'm guessing a lot of them will pick it up to either play Fortnite or jump on NSO and play Mario Bros. 3 because they're Gen Xers that don't really game that often. So I'm gonna say they don't care either. And again, this is just an opinion. It's a fun game. Don't attack me with your pitchforks. Let's all be cool here. So yeah, as far as the actual improvements to the console and the tablet itself goes, I would say only the power people really care about the upgrades. And I think outside of the performance people, for the most part, it just looks like more Switch, which could be problematic, but we'll talk about that in the conclusion. Now let's move on to the Joy-Con. Now, they've obviously increased in size, the rail was upgraded to magnets, the analog sticks are larger. Of course, there's also the mouse functionality. I'm gonna say this one is easier. I think if you went to any person and held two Joy-Cons in front of them, and one of them was the old one and one of them was the new one, just based off of the size of the shoulder buttons alone, they would take it, those being the SL and the SR buttons. But to break it down more, the mouse functionality I'm kind of 50-50 on. And that I think all three categories would actually be 50-50 on. There might be some power folks that view it as nothing more than a dumb gimmick, but other ones that can only imagine the endless possibilities of playing games that were originally meant for the PC on the Switch. And likewise, I think there are a fan of the experience type people that will view the mouse controls as a really fun gimmick to spice up the party games, but other ones that are just kind of like shrugging and being like, okay, I guess it's there, similar to the sensor that was on the back of the Joy-Con, or even the HD Rumble to an extent. And the blue ocean folks will see the size and just be like, yeah, that's better. I can actually hold that in my hand sideways and the joystick is not dinky. So yeah, I think for multiple reasons, the Joy-Con 2s will be more appealing, especially if they actually don't drift, which we'll see, I guess. Nintendo did say they are officially more durable, but I also have saltine crackers that are more durable than my original Joy-Cons, so we'll see how this goes. Similar to the actual console itself, when you're holding the Joy-Cons, or when you're putting them in the Joy-Con grip, comparing them to the original Switch, they just look like they're bigger. They also have the C button, which will be locked behind a paywall, but I don't know if it matters too much in this analysis. But the game chat feature could actually be a lot of fun. And I'm guessing most people are going to get Nintendo Switch Online. I don't know what the actual statistics are for the Switch 1 of how many people actually got it, but in my circles, it seems like everybody has it. So as negative as it is that there's a button locked behind the paywall, I also think that everybody just has NSO, and that could be completely wrong of me to assume. But the point stands that the game chat feature could be very appealing and could be a way to draw in people into the Nintendo Switch atmosphere from the Blue Ocean as well. So while I think the actual tablet itself in its appearance didn't look innovative enough and might deter some people away from feeling like it is just more of the same Nintendo Switch, I think the larger controllers are something tangible you can hold in your hand, that they literally are going to be held in your hands, and so even if they do look the same but bigger, that's not a bad thing. So yeah, all around unanimously, I think the Joy-Cons are a W. Not necessarily saying that everybody is happy to be using the Joy-Cons, but I'm just saying if they had a choice between Joy-Con 1 and Joy-Con 2, I'm guessing most people are going to go for 2, and they're going to go for it much more excitedly than they would when they're just going for the two tablets side by side. Now, you also have the Pro Controller. The three big differences here are the addition of the C button, the audio jack, and the paddles. The form factor did change a little bit, but not enough to really make it significantly different. It looks like it could just be one of the limited edition Switch Pro controllers with a slight adjustment in the form factor. So I don't really use paddle buttons. I'm guessing most of the people that are in it for the experience don't either. The casuals definitely don't. The headphone jack is cool, but well, you know what? Let's look at it this way. If you already own a Switch Pro controller, which of these categories of people would actually buy the Switch 2 Pro controller? I mean, I know if I got a Switch 2, I was never planning on getting the Switch 2 Pro controller. I already have the one that I love from the Switch 1, and I thought it was great, and it does everything I want it to do. The casual Ocean folks, yeah, they're not going to buy it. They're going to say, I already have a Pro controller. Most of them will probably just play with the Joy-Cons. They're definitely not buying an additional one of these. They might actually buy more Joy-Cons for when their friends come over. The power folks, I'm kind of torn on this one, actually. I don't know how much the paddle buttons and the headphone jack actually matters to them. I could be completely off base on this, but I don't think this is going to sell well even for the power people, especially if they have more than one Switch Pro controller. Like if they have one Switch Pro controller, they might just be like, you know what, I'll get a Switch 2 Pro controller and that way I have two for multiplayer, but I don't know, man. You guys got to tell me this in the comments because I don't think this is going to sell well. I'm going to say none of these three categories are going to buy this thing. And that's partially because I think it is too similar to the original Switch controller. Not much has changed. For the last 3 console generations, you've had a reason to get the different controller. I mean, even ignoring the fact that the classic controller Pro had to connect to the Wii remote, the placement of the joysticks has changed with every generation over the past 3 consoles. So even then, with every new controller, you can argue you're doing it partially because of the placement of the joysticks was more comfortable for you. But I don't know, this Pro controller was probably the most underwhelming thing for me personally. Don't get me wrong, I think it's going to be a great controller, but it's like, if I already have the Switch Pro controller, why would I get the Switch 2 Pro controller just for a headphone jack and those paddle buttons? And mind you, I think there was a lot they could have improved on the controller. Not necessarily in how it looks and feels, but if they added all of the little innovative gimmicks that were included in the PlayStation 5 controller, at least at that point we'd have something to talk about here. But there is very little reason to get this if you already have a Switch Pro controller. Now, next up, we'll look at the dock. It looks similar, the rounded edges do give it kind of a nicer look, and obviously it is a little bit larger to accommodate for the larger Switch, but I think the most important factor here is the Ethernet port. Now on the Switch 1, you could plug in an Ethernet to USB adapter to get your wired connection. I could be wrong here, but I think having a direct to Ethernet port is more stable. And I guess even if it's not, it's one less dongle to have, so I think it is a drastic improvement. I would say the Ocean people probably don't care because I doubt they even connect their consoles to the internet. If they do, it's wirelessly. I could definitely see the performance people go for that Ethernet port if it gives you a more stable connection. And I'm 50-50 on the experience people because a lot of them might just play handheld, a lot of them might not even play online. But for me personally, the experience is always better when the connection is better. So I'm gonna say yeah, if the Ethernet port actually makes it more stable to play online, I would definitely buy a Switch 2 dock, even if hypothetically speaking the Switch 1 dock worked with the Switch 2 as well. So really it would just be the Blue Ocean people that wouldn't really care about this. Of course this is all kind of hypothetical, that dock is going to be coming with the Switch 2 regardless, but still I think it's worth the discussion. So that's more or less the hardware that makes up the Nintendo Switch 2. You obviously have a different USB-C charger, but they're both USB-C chargers at the end of the day. If the old one works on the new one, who cares? I don't know if it's going to work on it or not, but whatever, it's a charger. It's going to come with the console when you buy it. It's not really worth discussing too much unless it was like a super duper fast charger that fully charged your Switch 2 in 1 hour. But it isn't, so it doesn't matter. And likewise with the HDMI cable, whatever. In addition to this, I would say there is the secondary stuff to consider. I'm not gonna have a discussion on the game key cards. I've already done that. But the Switch 2 cartridges are red to make them stand out a little bit. Otherwise, they more or less look the same. The game cases themselves are a little bit larger and they have more red on them to make them stand out just a little bit more. And then you have some official carrying cases which look exactly the same as the Switch 1 stuff, but they're just a little bit larger. And obviously some of the goofier accessories that have stuck around since the Wii, like the steering wheels. I would say the appearance of this stuff doesn't really matter too much for the sake of this analysis, but it is important. And I think it is potentially worth including in our discussion to figure out who is going to buy the Switch 2 and who isn't. So just looking at the raw stuff, the things that I went through previously, the power folks are definitely going to buy. They like the tablet, they like the Joy-Cons, they like the dock. Even if they're not interested in the Pro Controller, they view it as a worthy upgrade, if they can afford it. I would say the experience folks are 50-50. They might not necessarily care about all the improvements in the internals, but they might want the better Joy-Cons, they might think it's worth it just to upgrade for the sake of playing the new games. And that's including the GameCube games. I'm guessing those GameCube games are going to be a lot more appealing for that category than the other two. And again, not that the power folks will not be interested in the GameCube games, I just think that it might be weighted a little bit more on the experience prioritizers. But at the same time, they might also view it as just kind of like a, what's the point of upgrading situation? I might have plenty of Switch 1 games to still get through. I don't care that it's underperforming based off the current times. Do I really need to move forward? And that could be a yes. That's why I'm saying it's 50-50. And then you have the vast Ocean people, which I don't think they're going to upgrade. I think there's going to be a lot of that whole, we already have a Nintendo Switch at home situation. Now, they might have a kid that's begging them to get them a new Nintendo Switch 2, and that's a little bit of a different story. But a lot of these people bought a Nintendo Switch 1, have a ton of games still to get through, if they even buy more than 1 or 2 games a year, and they already have a Mario Kart available for their once every 3 months game night. So now when all of a sudden somebody tells them there's a new Nintendo Switch and they go to the store and they're like, what can I get? And they're gonna be like, Mario Kart. They're gonna say, well, I already have a Mario Kart at home. And it goes deeper than that. They're going to see the same controllers. They're going to see a lot of the same games. And perhaps one of the more worrying things, they're going to see almost the exact same boxes. Because when you strip it down, the Switch 2 looks like a larger Switch 1. But when you look at it on a shelf, ooh, it is way too similar to the Switch. Now, consider for a second what happened with the Wii U. Everybody always says that it was a marketing issue. People didn't even realize that it was actually a different console. Supposedly, people assumed that the gamepad was just another peripheral in the same way that the balance board was. If that is indeed true, do you guys not think that this could easily happen again over here? Now, the obvious advantage that Nintendo has is that they've used the number 2 instead of the letter U. That is, oh man, that's easily worth at least 5 to 10 million sales alone. But at the same time, in keeping everything looking so similar to how it was on the Switch 1, you don't think that many of the casuals are gonna confuse this? I mean, if you consider that the PlayStation 3 had the whole black theme, I guess, and then the PlayStation 4 had a lot more blue in it, and then the PS5 went for the white, there was probably a reason they did that. The Switch 2 boxes and cases and cartridges are just red, and red was already the theme of the Switch 1. And a lot of these casuals are either going to see an ad on the TV or they're going to be walking around in a retail store and they're just going to see the Switch, which they already have at home. And I think this is actually going to harm the Switch 2 sales. Now, I will kind of take a little sidebar here for a second and mention that the pre-orders are all sold out because everybody likes to jump on and go, "Hey, the 2.2 million in Japan and you guys think it's gonna get boycotted." Yeah, no, the Blue Ocean people are not the ones that are pre-ordering this thing, and they are the majority of the buyers. Just keep that in mind. I expect the worst console in history to get sold out in pre-orders because that's just the type of world that we live in now. I'm not saying that the Switch 2 would be the worst selling console in history. In fact, I don't even think it'll be close to it. But I would say with the type of world we live in, between all of the hype chasers, the FOMO, the dudes that get sucked into the marketing without thinking twice, and the scalpers, there is zero chance the Wii U would have not had the same amount of orders as the Switch 2 does right now, in my humble opinion. But anyway, my point is that these Blue Ocean people, they're not the ones that are pre-ordering the Switch. Those are the other two categories, the power chasers and the experience folks, and both of those I would consider either hardcore gamers or hardcore Nintendo fans. Now, back when the Wii U came out, the power folks were not interested, but the experience folks were. And given that the power folks make up a sizable chunk of the actual Nintendo fandom, as well as the fandoms of all the other consoles, because a lot of these people already have a PlayStation 5, they have a Steam Deck, they have an Xbox, and they're buying the Switch as their second console, I think there are easily more numbers in that power category than there are in that experience category. And I would say that if the Switch 2 appealed to the experience category people more, it would probably have a worse start to its lifetime. But the difference is, if they did appeal to those people that are looking for the experience, either by finding some kind of innovative gimmick, keeping the console simpler but making it more affordable, including a portrait mode so that you can play DS games on there, I don't know, just whatever it is to appeal to the old school Nintendo fanboys. I don't make consoles, so I don't actually know what they could have done to appeal to us, I just know that they've done it numerous times in the past. If they went that route and appealed to us, it would have stood out to us more, and we would have been the ones tripping over each other to make sure that we pre-ordered it. But in addition to that, I think if they had appealed to us, it wouldn't look like the Nintendo Switch, and it definitely wouldn't be called the Nintendo Switch anything. Not 2, not U, nothing. And if that happens, and the gimmick turns out to be something fun and enticing, then that Blue Ocean would have fallen right along, because they would have seen it in the stores, it would have looked different, it would have had a different name, and coming off the success of the previous generation, they wouldn't think to themselves, we already have a Switch at home, why are we buying this? Now they easily could have been like, we already have a Nintendo console at home, why are we buying this? Just like it happened with the Wii and the Wii U. But again, it's that name, the Wii, Wii U, the Switch, Switch 2. It's a bit ironic because in an attempt to avoid confusing people in the same way that they did from the Wii to the Wii U, and by trying to play it safe, I think they're actually doing it again from the Switch to the Switch 2. Obviously, it's yet to be seen though. We'll have to see how this all pans out. But don't come to me in 2 months and tell me that the Switch is doing great. Don't even come to me in 6 months. Come to me in a year. If in roughly a year from now, we're still looking at the fastest selling console in history for first year numbers, I will gladly pick somebody in random from my subscribers and buy them a Nintendo Switch 2. Because I'm of the opinion that by the time the Switch 2 gets to its first birthday, we might be looking at the first price cut. And if you think I'm being crazy in assuming that, let me ask you something. Did any of you that are listening to this video not know that the Wii U and the Wii were two separate consoles. And don't answer that question if you're somebody that just got into gaming 5 or 6 years ago. Don't answer that question if you're somebody that was like 7 when the Wii U came out. I'm talking about people that were actually gamers, old enough to be on the internet, owned maybe 1 or 2 consoles, probably had the Wii, that category of individuals. Because I am convinced at least 95, if not 99% of you that are listening to this video right now knew the difference between the Wii and the Wii U. So it wasn't you guys that didn't go out to buy the Wii U. You guys aren't the one that got confused by the marketing. And back then, if you guys had liked the Wii U, you guys would have been the same people to pre-order it. Many of you are the ones that pre-ordered it, or bought it in its first year. So when you consider that the people in the vast blue ocean that were not part of the gaming sphere were the ones that got confused and didn't know what was the Wii U as compared to the Wii, you have to consider how many people are so disconnected from this circle of discussions that we have amongst ourselves on YouTube, on Reddit, on various different forums, that are also very likely to be extremely confused when they walk into a store and they don't even realize that there's a difference between a Switch and a Switch 2. It's not enough for the Switch 2 to fail as bad as the Wii U, but I would be so shocked if this whole attitude of keeping the Switch 2 and all of its accessories and all of its color schemes and all of its boxes and logos and all of that stuff so similar to what we saw on the Switch 1 doesn't cause a major decline in sales. But yeah, I told you, this would be a fun game to do. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time.